recitation of the four great vows. So you can join palms and bow. I vow to deliver innumerable sentient beings. I vow to cut off endless vexations. I vow to master limitless approaches to Dharma. I vow to attain supreme Buddhahood. So thank you all for coming to listen. Um, Tonight's topic is one that I find to be pretty interesting. Uh, you may not know about me, but in my professional life, I'm a massage therapist. And one of the practices that I engage in is Baguazhang. So that is like this internal style Chinese martial art that's in the same family as Tai Chi Chuan. And I've actually picked up a couple of classes recently, teaching that to my little old ladies at the Cancer Support Community Center of Central Ohio. So for me, using the body in practice is pretty fundamental, but we're still exploring the Lankavatara Sutra. The Lankavatara is a Yogacara or a Tathagata Garbha school sutra. And those are like all about the mind. Everything is created by the mind. So today I wanted to try to present something that would help us bring our earth-based bodies along, to pick those up and include them in the practice. Because as Chan practitioners, there's nothing that should be excluded from our practice. Everything should be brought in and incorporated. So what I'm hoping to do tonight is to share with you how I try to accomplish that. So we're going to be building off of the same rubric that we used last time, that being the three natures. So if you remember, we have the conceptual nature, we have the dependent nature, and we have the absolute nature. Sometimes it's called modes instead of nature. And these are not separate realities. These are aspects of the same reality that can be experientially very different. So we're going to start by looking at the body or relating to it as we usually do. This body as a physical organism. So this body is a physical organism. It has a certain set of needs or requirements. It needs food and it needs rest. These are two very basic requirements. And for today's purposes, I'm looking at food as something that you add to the body, because when you think about going to get a nice veggie sandwich or whatever it is that you're eating, that's something that's you're adding to the body. You take it from the external environment, you put it in your mouth, you chew it up, you swallow it, and that food later becomes the body. What we know through science is that every single cell in our body is replaced every 7 years. And it's the addition of food that allows that replacement. So on the subtractive or reductive side of things, we've got rest. And rest is, it sort of takes away our fatigue. In a very physical sense, it enables our body to process the buildup of toxins. Being awake and going about our everyday lives, it's very tiring, and we build up all kinds of hormones, all kinds of stress in the body. And so these periods of rest are required to reduce or subtract all this stuff. As practitioners, I am going to include a third requirement for the body, and this is practice itself. So when we think about practicing with the body just as a physical organism, I'm all about the health of the body. As a massage therapist, I'm always putting my hands on people, and trying to identify all of the not so helpful patterns that have crept into the body and relieve those patterns such that they can come into proper alignment. And when I'm teaching my gals about the internal martial arts practices, it's all about structure. So having the things in alignment, whether you're going to accomplish that by having some helpful healer put their hands on you and reduce the tension that's built up, or providing some type of instructions to help you get your body in order. Most of my Bagua practice is just standing still and pulling everything or feeling it come into alignment. And, this is supposed to be very good for all of the energetic channels. I can't speak to that personally, but what I can tell you is that when the body is in alignment, it is supremely helpful for the accomplishing of just day-to-day activities, because you know how to have your elbows. When you're holding weight, you keep the elbows oriented towards the midline. It helps the scapula be properly placed along the spine. All of these teeny tiny little things that proper structure just helps you with day-to-day life. But there is something that this structure requires, and that is a type of mindfulness or just awareness. And this is the practice that we require for a healthy physical body. We have to have mindfulness. Even if we're not talking about just the structure of the body, if we're not mindful, we're going to bump into stuff. We're going to accumulate all kinds of cuts and braces. While we're sitting at our desk, typing away, working, we're going to find that we're sticking out our chin, our shoulders are creeping up, and all of these things are going to lead to just this accumulation of stress, and the body is going to become less and less uncomfortable, and we're going to try to spend less time in the body. So once this cycle starts, it encourages a lack of awareness, a reduction of mindfulness. But when we incorporate this mindfulness and awareness in what we're doing, it can reverse that process. So when we are looking at just basic meditation, sitting meditation, that's something as a good Buddhists we're all supposed to do, or we would at least like to do every day. We have to be mindful about the structure of our body. We've all heard the instructions. You build the tripod on the ground. You got your two knees or your butt. Or if you're sitting in a chair, you got your butt and your 2 feet on the ground. You want your knees to be below your hips. You want the shoulders to be slightly rounded, tuck the chin, raise the top of the head. Tongue behind the teeth. All of these things are just a basic kind of mindfulness, a basic kind of awareness. And this is applied to the sitting posture. It's a fundamental piece of practice. If you go to a beginning retreat or a 1 day of mindfulness, they're going to give this to you before your object of meditation, because it's this structure that helps to promote the awareness. And then once you start to develop or realize awareness, it helps to fix the structure. But this type of awareness is not just something that we do while sitting. We can cultivate a moment-to-moment awareness of the body. When I go to other places here in Columbus, like the Zen groups are very popular here. And for the Zen practices, they'll have you sit, they'll have you walk, and then they'll have you sit again. And this is just a common order that all of the Zen groups that I've participated in, they just follow this regular regimen. And I can't tell you how many times I've had people come up to me after the group and say, "Oh, wow, your walking was so wonderful. I can tell that you're a good practitioner just because of how you walk." And to me, it's just walking. But as part of the Bhagavad practice, that's one of the fundamental practices. You stand and you build your structure, but you also just walk in a circle. And as you walk in the circle, you're doing it at that Tai Chi speed. So you're walking just as slow as you possibly can, but as smoothly as you possibly can. So there has been this cultivation of awareness of walking. And the historical Shakyamuni Buddha, one of the fundamental mindful practices that he taught was mindfulness of postures. So whether you're standing, sitting, walking, or lying down, you practice with this awareness of the body. So the body serves as a tremendous source of grounding for the awareness. And as the awareness settles in the body, you start to notice more and more stuff. Awareness deepens as you go along. But the Buddha didn't just teach about using the whole body as awareness. One of the most common methods that the Buddha taught, and it's one that we use at Dharma Drum Mountain all the time, is awareness of breathing. So rather than use the entirety of the posture as your anchor for your meditation, you just use the tip of the nose. But this is still awareness of body. We use either the whole body or we use just a little piece of the body. As long as you're alive, the body is going to be there. Even when you're dreaming, most of the time, the body is going to be there. The body is something that is always kind of present, so we can have our finger on. And this is the practice that we greatly benefit from, and it helps us have this physical organism be healthy. But all of this is taking place in the conceptual mode of things. And there is in the Lankavatara Sutra, it talks about there being three different kinds of Buddhas that correspond to each of these modes. And they give different kinds of instruction, I guess you could say. So the type of Buddha that appears in the conceptual mode, it calls it the Nirmana Buddha. So the Nirmana Buddha is like the Nirmanakaya. So this is the appearance body of the Buddha. So if you look behind me, you see that guy sitting there on the tapestry. He looks like a human being. He's got these 32 different marks. That is the appearance body. The Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, appeared in the world, walked around for a good long while, and taught a bunch of stuff. What kind of stuff did he teach? Well, in the Lankavatara Sutra, it says that the Nirmana Buddha teaches pretty much all of the Buddhist lists, all of the lists. So the four foundations of mindfulness, this mindfulness of different postures, the six paramitas, the four immeasurables. Any list that you can think of, any list in the Buddhist canon that you can write it down and say, one, two, three, four, five. These are the five qualities that the Buddha says that you should be practicing. All of these are taught by the Nirmana Buddha because these are all conceptual in nature. But concepts can be very, very useful. We are using them every day, all the time. And even when we think about this body, we're relating to it in terms of a concept. it is a physical organism. It requires food, water, practice. All of these are just concepts, but there is a point where these concepts are incredibly useful, invaluable. And I am not for a moment suggesting that we're trying to destroy the concept of the body. Instead, what I am encouraging is that through our practice, we we bridge the gap between this conceptual mode and the next mode. And the way that I propose doing that, the way that I do this in my own personal practice, is to change the way that I relate to the body. So instead of the body as just a physical organism, we can be a lot more curious and think of the body or use the body as just a field of awareness. Whenever we are working with concepts, it's like every concept you're writing down a name, you're writing down a quality, you're writing something down on a piece of paper, like a little post-it, and then you slap that post-it on. And so the next time you look at it, you see a person, it's Warren. I have all these memories about Warren. Warren, he was my roommate when I went over to the East Asian pilgrimage, and I have all these associations with Warren. Warren is this, that, and the other thing. But when we are only using concepts in this way, we don't actually see what's underneath the label. What we see is the label. And when that's the way that we experience life, we really miss out. We miss out on so much that's there. And so Shakyamuni Buddha, or this Nirmana Buddha, starts teaching these lists. And Shakyamuni Buddha, he taught all of these ways to use mindfulness. You got your mindfulness of breathing, you got your mindfulness of postures. You have like a clear comprehension of what you're doing. So instead of thinking about eating, you directly experience eating. So that's mindfulness of eating. If I was to pick up this seltzer instead of thinking, well, I'm just going to grab that seltzer, there's mindfulness. And the body is now a field of awareness, and there's so much stuff going on. And now there's this sensation of contact, there's all this coldness. The Buddha also recommended that you try to break down the body. You don't just want to view it as this singular unit, just like a living organism. The Buddha taught this, like, to break it down into all these different parts. You got your internal organs, so you can visualize your heart and your lungs, things that you don't normally experience. You don't even normally think about. Your heart and lungs probably aren't on your post-it note unless you went and saw the doctor recently and he's worried about your blood pressure. You don't consider what's actually there in the body at all. You don't think about your hair except when it gets stuck in the vacuum cleaner. Yeah, you don't think about your nails until you have a hangnail. But there are all of these parts in the body. There's all of this richness that's there that if you just relate to it as that solid label, you miss it. You miss out entirely. Um, you miss out that it's getting old and that it's going to decompose. Buddha would send people into charnel grounds to look at corpses as they go through the various stages of decomposition to change the way that they relate to the body. And one of the splits that I find very helpful in being less coarse with the body is to look at things in terms of the four elements. You got your air, you got your earth, you got your water, and you got your fire. So instead of just looking at the body like, I'm reaching out and grabbing this can of seltzer, there's the sensation of movement. There is the the subtle currents of air that are moving over the fingers. Some of them are warm because it's entering the path where my breath is, and then it touches this can. And then there's all of this coldness. So we got warm and cold, the fire element. We've got the sensation of hardness. We've got the earth element. Um, the all of these things are happening. But so long as we are tied to that concept of the body as a physical organism, we stop. We can't look any deeper into what's there. So when we begin to we shift from relating to the body simply as this physical organism, and we can be curious, what is there? And when we make this transition, we are looking at the body instead as a field of awareness. And that awareness is going to notice all kinds of stuff. And this is the point at which the practice of mindfulness now is beginning to bridge the gap between the conceptual nature and the dependent nature. So the dependent nature is seeing all of these different causes and conditions, all of this stuff. None of it is appearing on its own, and it's all connected with all of this other stuff that's appearing. And so we can begin to really change the way that we experience our bodies. For example, did you know that there are so many nerve endings in the body that they outnumber the stars in in the visible sky? No matter where you go on Earth, you go to a place that's so far away from all the cities. So there's no light pollution, and you are looking out onto the vastness of the the Milky Way, and you see all like innumerable stars just twinkling in the sky. You have more nerve endings than that in your body, but you don't experience the body in that way. But when we begin to get more subtle with the awareness of the body, a single drop of water can fall on the shoulder, and so many changes happen in the body. So much activity is there, and there's less and less stuff to hold on to. What we begin to see is that in this actual experience of the body, our moment to moment experience of the body, there is no part of that experience that you can point your finger at and say, aha, here is the physical organismness of the body. No part of your experience is of the body will give you that definition, because that definition, that way of relating, is just a concept. That's all that it is. If you are aware of the body, just what is the body going to show? What's going to come out of the body? You get you just get all this mysterious stuff. And all of those lists that I shared, those mindfulness of the 32 body parts, mindfulness of the four elements, these are still conceptual in nature, but they are a set of concepts that takes you away from big, bulky concept to itty bitty little teeny tiny concepts. And once you start being able to experience these itty bitty little tiny concepts, you'll start to become aware that everything that you experience that is a thing is just an itty bitty little concept, like a label that's stuck over the actuality of your experience. Last time that we met, I did the trick where I asked you, "Where do you see me?" "Oh, I see you over there. You're on the computer screen," but you don't see anything in the external world. You don't see anything out there. What you see is stuff projected in your consciousness. You don't actually feel anything in your fingers. You just feel stuff that's projected in consciousness. You don't hear anything from outside. Even just looking at a purely materialistic view, like my cat had come up to the door earlier, and I'm I've taught my cat a bad habit because if the cat comes up and yells outside my door, I will oftentimes open the door and let her in. So now, whenever she wants to, she comes up and yells at the door, and she will keep yelling at the door until I let her in. Nevertheless, I am not hearing a cat out there. That's not actually what's happening. There's sound vibration that's striking some sensitive matter in the air. It's getting transformed into electrical energy, which is lighting up the brain like a series of lightning bolts shooting through this dark cloud and hearing in consciousness, auditory consciousness. There is what I could call a sound. And then I put a label on it. That's my cat. That's my cat yelling outside. And man, I wish that cat would leave me alone because it's not fair. I'm giving a Dharma presentation and my that cat shouldn't be bothering me. And now I'm thinking about all the times that the cat's bothering me and the bad habit that I've taught the cat. And I've gone right back into the conceptual nature of things. But instead, if there is just this awareness, this open awareness as to what's happening, this is awareness of body too. All of this stuff you could say is coming through the body. So the body as a field of awareness, it's whatever comes in is coming into the body. The Buddha that corresponds to the dependent nature in the Lankavatara Sutra is called the Nishyanda Buddha. And the Nishyanda Buddha does not teach lists. All of the lists, these are more subtle concepts that help us break down our gross attachment to concepts. What the Nishyanda Buddha teaches is that all appearances, so all phenomena, everything that appears through sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and thought, everything that appears due to habit energy, ignorance, and that all phenomena are just projections of the mind. So this is what what is taught for the dependent mode or within the dependent sphere. And this becomes the practice. But one of the ways that I also try to think about this, and so this is not Lankavatara, this is just the way that I approach the using the body in the dependent mode of things, is I think instead of the body as being this physical organism, you can think about it as being a karmic body, and that we still require food, rest, and practice for this body. So the food is, you'd say it's virtue. So this is where the bodhisattvas practice. And the rest is this non-engagement or detachment. So the aspect of the trikaya that corresponds to this realm, the dependent nature, this is the sambhogakaya. And this is oftentimes translated as the bliss body or the reward body. And so this is how I try to make sense of it. I try to make sense of this that through the implementation of virtue, adding virtue, you get bliss. You get nice, good, happy feelings. This is causes and conditions never fail. Pratitya samutpada. You put a certain thing into mind, and you get a corresponding resultant. So you put virtue in mind, you get you get bliss. And this reductive side, we are beginning to practice non-engagement and detachment even more. And the practice at this level, this is what that Nishyanda Buddha was teaching, the mindfulness that all phenomena are projections of mind. So it's the practice in the first mode is mindfulness. The practice in the second mode is also mindfulness. This is our practice, whether we're mindful of something very tiny or mindful of chopping stuff up into little bits, chopping up big things into smaller things, it's still mindfulness. But here we're having the mindfulness that whatever it is that appears is just a projection of mind. And this is how we direct the mind. We direct the mind to be aware of this. We direct the mind not to have any kind of object, because any kind of object, no matter how subtle, is still going to have all of these conceptual baggage attached to it. This is actually an instruction that the Lankavatara Sutra is very deliberate at providing. It says that you should avoid objects of meditation because, again, we are on the path of mind-only wisdom. And so instead of using the body as this physical organism, either a piece of the body or the whole physical body, we're changing the way that we relate to this experience so that body is this field. Body is just this field of awareness. And we're no longer trying to concentrate on anything that shows up in it, nor are we trying to restrict its boundaries. So the body is just this outline. And so now I'm practicing here, just sitting, being aware of only what's in that outline. The Lankavatara would not approve of this. The Lankavatara would say just awareness and don't engage with anything that shows up. And it's all just projections appearing in the mind. And what this begins to accomplish. So, in between the first two natures, between the conceptual nature and the dependent nature, we use this mindfulness to bridge the gap. So, where we went from using concepts to now we're trying to not attach to any concepts, just view whatever it is that shows up as a projection of mind, and even to attach to that. That's just the little training wheels that we use, the finger pointing towards the moon. But we begin to bridge the gap between the dependent nature and the absolute nature. Not that there was actually any gap between these at all. We're just talking about experientially. And we are able to bridge this gap because there begins to be this realization of non-duality. And one of the passages in the Lankavatara, what it says is that the body of the Buddha is knowledge. So knowledge is the body of the Buddha. The way that I try to think of these three different relatings to the body is kind of like this. In the conceptual nature, your body is a physical organism. In the dependent nature, your body becomes the practice itself. So in the conceptual mode, you're a sentient being. Sentient being has a physical body. In the dependent mode, you're practicing as a bodhisattva. And the bodhisattva's body is practice. But in the absolute, that's the Buddha. And the Buddha's body is this knowledge. But it's not knowledge in a conceptual way. It's not book knowledge where, I can open it up and say, aha, I've memorized all of this. Therefore I have knowledge. Therefore, I'm the Buddha body. That's not the type of knowledge that it's referring to. What it's referring to is direct knowledge. Sometimes this is called gnosis, Gnosis, gnosis. And what this is referring to is a lack of separateness. Because whenever we have conceptual knowledge, it's I know that thing. There is subject and there is object. I see that. I have conceptual knowledge that that thing is over there and I am over here. But in the direct knowledge of Buddha, there is a complete absence of this separation. That's why it's non-dual. This is a non-dual realization or a realization of non-duality. And the Buddha that goes along with this nature is the Dharmata Buddha. And the Dharmata Buddha does not teach because there are no concepts. There is no duality. Who is there for the Dharmata Buddha to teach? And what could they possibly say that is non-conceptual? The closest that I can think of, you might have heard of this famous Chan character, Master Lin Chi. And Master Lin Chi, one of his skillful means is he would shout. People would come and ask questions, and he would shout so abruptly and so loudly that they were shocked. They were so shocked that they couldn't think of anything. So they'd ask a question, maybe Lin Chi would have a little back and forth, and then suddenly he would shout, and they would be struck speechless. So Master Lin Chi was trying to introduce them to the Dharmata Buddha, which is entirely non-conceptual, does not teach, does not speak. And what the Lankavatara says, it establishes the realm which transcends appearances. And here, when we are looking at transcends, we're not talking about going beyond or leaving behind, because there's no place to go and there's no place to leave. So if we're like, oh yes, I'm going to go beyond the concepts, this is not a non-dual realization. This is the ego sneaking in through the back door, like, I'm bringing in duality. No, we're going to leave words behind, and we're gonna leave all those slacker practitioners, and well, then we're gonna show everybody. But the Dharmata Buddha couldn't speak to this person, couldn't reveal mind to this person. The aspect of the Trikaya that corresponds to this is the Dharmakaya. And you'll see this term thrown around in a lot of sutras. And the translation that I really appreciate and I really get a lot from contemplating is the Dharmakaya as the reality body. So you've got your appearance body, poof, here I am. You've got your bliss body as sort of the consequence of practicing. Practicing is very, very joyful. When I was yesterday, I took off from work and I was just sitting down and studying and prepping for this presentation all day. And it was such a joyful experience. Wasn't chasing after this and that, like, oh, let me watch my favorite TV program. Let me do this. Let me do that. Simply engaging in this activity of practice was incredibly joyful. Not like I'm going to start jumping around the house joyful, but joyful in the way that you could just sit. You just sit and be still and experience the joy of practice. So you got your appearance body, poof, here I am. You got your bliss body, which is the consequence of practice. And then you've got your Dharmakaya, your reality body, which there's no separation, and it is absolutely fundamental. And in the Yogacara school, and many, many, many Chan masters would say that this is just mind because it's fundamental. You can't break things down any further than this. It's just mind. It is truly the field in which things appear, but it's not a field that has a circumference or a boundary. It is completely and utterly without boundary. It goes all the way down to the small, and it goes all the way up to the big without any differentiation, without any compare. Whatever can appear appears in mind. And there's not even the separation between the field and what appears. There's no differentiation. There's no separating. There's no duality. And this is why the Dharmata Buddha can't teach anything. So with the other two realms, we talked about the food, the rest, and the practice. Food as being what you add. In the conceptual realm, this is nom nom nom. I'm going to eat stuff to nourish the body. In the dependent realm, this is the practice of virtue itself. And we had rest, which was subtractive, reductive. And in the conceptual realm, oh, I'm going to sleep, clear out toxins. In the dependent realm, I'm not going to attach to things. But in the realm of the absolute, there is no additive and there's no subtractive. There is nothing that can be added to reality. Where would it come from if it wasn't in reality? There's nothing that can be taken away from reality. Where would it go? Here, let me. This is bad right here. Let's get rid of this. Let's take it out of reality. Even if you smashed it with a hammer until it was nothing but the teeniest, tiniest atoms, where would it go? Like even if you ate those, they'd still be in reality. There's nothing that can be added, and there's nothing that can be taken away. This is the the realization of the absolute. And this is the realm of Buddha knowledge, the direct gnosis that nothing can be added, nothing can be taken away. And one of the lines that I especially love from this sutra is that the essential characteristic consists in non-arising. You could say that it also consists in non-perishing, because if something comes up, it came from somewhere, but nothing can arise in the absolute, because you could say that it was always there, that it's fundamental pieces, that what it is actually made up of, which is just mind. Remember, in the dependent mode, we were practicing this awareness that everything is just a projection of the mind. And so, as we begin to enter the absolute, there's no differentiation between appearances. Even the subtle appearances of arising, persisting, and falling away. Those are just projections, and they have no reality as anything but projections. And that is the realization of the Buddhas. But this is a realization that cannot be taught in words, and it cannot be practiced via activity, because any words, any activity involves the cutting up. And that is what you could say comprises the essential characteristic of the absolute, is that there's nothing that can be cut up. Nevertheless, all teachings of all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas come from this realm, the realm of the absolute. But they are merely reflections of this realm. They are reflections of the realm that begin to influence, you could say, the what's trapped, or believes that it's trapped, primarily in the conceptual realm. And this is why Chan is so dear to me, because I've been told I'm terrible with Chinese characters, in that I think I know one. Oh, I know two. I know the character for one, which is just, the line across the horizon. And I know Zhong, which is middle. It's like a little box with a line through it. Those are the two characters that I know in Chinese. But I have been told that the Chinese character for Chan is made up of two different radicals. One of them is simple, and the other one is to show. And this is as close as anything that you can have to a practice of the absolute, or the perfected realm. It is a demonstration, and that's it. And any practice that we are able to engage in is merely a demonstration of realization. Sometimes we don't have a lot of realization. All we have is faith. But having a realization that there is faith lets you try things, and lets you maybe not be so good at them. So you're trying to practice patience, but gosh darn it, that cat just came up outside my door again, and I'm so upset. And this shows that there's not a deep realization, because if there were a deep realization, impatience wouldn't show up, because there would be no interruption in the knowledge, in the gnosis, that whatever it is that's showing up is just a projection of mind. And so there's not actually a thing there to get upset with. There's not actually a person here to get upset. But we're not trying to mimic someone else's practice. We are each going to have a practice of our own. And all of our activities of body, speech, and mind, whether you are aware of it or not, demonstrations of realization. So when there is a great investment in a solid and separate self, there's going to be a demonstration of that realization. But in the Lankavatara Sutra, they would say that that's you're trying to cling onto a cloud in the sky. You're trying to rely on sea foam to support you. It's something that cannot be done. But when we look out into the world, we can see why so many acts of greed, hatred, and delusion appear. And it's because there is if you can think of the realization of the Buddha as having reached all the way to the bottom of the ocean, the realization of most sentient beings were skipping stones over the surface of the water. It doesn't actually penetrate. There might be momentary, like, oh, wow, things really are connected. Like, oh yeah, if you removed if you separated this body from the environment, it would instantly be dead because it would not be able to partake of the heat of the sun. It would not be able to breathe the oxygen that's, floating around in the air. So there's a brief realization like, oh wow, yeah, things are connected until gosh darn it, that cat just came outside and started yelling again, and whatever it is, you get annoyed and you retreat from that realization. You start identifying with just this body as a solid thing rather than the body of your practice or the body of awareness. The last talk that I gave here was all about using mind only wisdom with people. This is using mind only wisdom with the body, but these are not actually separate because as realization deepens, as mind begins to recognize the dependent nature of phenomena, it begins to recognize that you are not really separate from me. We are only separate from one another in concept only, but not in actuality. And the understanding of the body transforms so that your body is not just this isolated physical organism, which is a momentary blip in time and space. Um, but it's something that's much more vast than that. And as you continue to practice and as you continue to study, as you continue to contemplate, the sense of body begins to just unfold endlessly. The sense of body does not have any beginning, nor does it have any end. There is no separation. And the realization of non-duality begins to penetrate the illusion of all of those projections. And as it begins to penetrate the illusion of all of those projections, there is the realization that this body is none other than the Buddha's body. So I want to just read a line from the record of Lin Chi, who I mentioned earlier. Lin Chi is one of my absolute favorites. If you want to read like any one Chan thing, find Lin Chi and go to town. But Lin Chi asks this question of his assembly: do you wish to not be different from the Buddhas and patriarchs? Yeah, I'd like to know them. I'd like to not be any different from them. I'd like to be as good and as perfect as a Buddha. So then she says, then just do not look for anything outside. The pure light of your own heart, or in Chinese, your heart mind, at this instant is the Dharmakaya Buddha in your own house. The pure light of your mind, the pure light of your heart, right now, that is the Dharmakaya. The non-differentiating light of your heart at this instant is the Sambhogakaya Buddha in your own house, not after an endless, 5 long kalpas of practice are you going to have this bliss or reward body. Right now, the non-differentiating light of your heart is the Sambhogakaya. The non-discriminating light of your own heart at this instant is the Nirmanakaya Buddha in your own house. What's your house? It's just mind. Wherever you're at, wherever you're appearing, whatever is appearing, that's your house, and it's mind. So this trinity of the Buddha's body is none other than here before your eyes, listening to my expounding the Dharma. What is hearing the Dharma right now? It is not your physical body. It is not your karmic body. It is just mind. Master Linchi, he looks at the Trikaya as just merely props or names. And actually, in the Lankavatara Sutra itself, multiple occasions, it says, all of these rubrics, all of these schemas that we have been using to give instruction to help you with your practice, none of those are real. Those are projections. Those are concepts. But in knowing this, we don't abandon them. We don't get rid of them. They're not actually a thing that we can get rid of or abandon. There is simply the illumination of them, the direct knowledge of them, just mind. And so, regardless of where you find yourself in any given moment, how you are relating to things, how you are relating to the world, you can use the body as a vehicle for practice. If you are in the conceptual, you begin to break the body down from a big thing into little things. And as you do so, you begin to look at the awareness itself. And the mind begins to settle, and our mind's intrinsic light begins to shine through. And there is realization. It's not your realization as a sentient being. It is mind's realization. And this realization completely transforms one's being. The Yogacharans, they call this the Asraya Paravirti, overturning the basis. And it's none other than a radical transformation of relating to things. And the practice that it looks like you are doing, it looks like a sentient being is practicing, that practice just begins to be, as I talked about in the last presentation, love, action, joy, and equanimity without end, without any limits. And wisdom reveals how best to reflect mind's nature moment to moment. So Return to your body to practice. If you are scattered in 10,000 directions, you're feeling the push and the pull on your heart. Return to your body with this little limit or with this little limit. But as you begin to settle, let that sense of body become more spacious. This environment in which you seem to appear is none other than your body. This planet on which you appear to be sitting or standing is none other than your body. Your body, as the Buddha body, as the body of reality, has no limit. And it will help enable your activities of body, speech, and mind to share this with sentient beings in sometimes small ways and sometimes bigger ways. If through smiling at someone or having a helpful interaction, you can help them ease a fear, any fear that helps them, whether they're aware of it or be more intimate with the true nature of things, with their Buddha nature. I think that I have talked enough for now, although I could keep on going and going and going. As Master Lin Chi says, there is no end to this trashy talk. So thank you all so much for coming and listening. Hope that you receive benefits from this presentation. Any benefit that you do receive from this, I can only attribute to my teachers, and any faults or mistakes in it, well, those belong to me.